take a step back, because the judge is not going to be the one conducting the deposition. Rather, the plaintiffs, in this case, the people representing Mr. Abrego Garcia, are the ones who asked to take expedited discovery. They also asked for an immediate evidentiary hearing, and she said, no, I'm not going to do that immediately. What I want you to do is go out and collect some facts. Depositions are not about gotcha moments. They're really about collecting information, the who, what, when, where, and why of the situation. So, pertinent to the questions that Gary was just laying out, the types of questions these folks are going to be asked, and the people who are deponents here are the 4 officials at ICE who have already submitted sworn declarations to give those daily updates that Judge Zinnes had previously required. They're going to have to sit there and answer questions about what has the government actually done so far to make those requests from the government of El Salvador. What kinds of conversations have you had within your agency about other requests that might have been made by people who are not sitting in this chair right now? When did you have those conversations? What is your knowledge of what other conversations have taken place? Personally, how do you know that? And it's because of those depositions and the questions that will be asked that Judge Zinnes has also said to the plaintiffs, look, if you feel like you need to depose additional people based on the answers that you get to these questions, you can come back before me, before the end of this month, and tell me the names of 2 more people that you want to sit in that chair and ask similar questions of.
And so, is there any kind of, I don't want to call it immunity, but moments or things that these people could say, you know what, we're currently in government, we can't be taking depositions after depositions?
Well, there's a limit on it numerically, right? There are 4 people that have to be deposed initially. She has allowed them an application to ask for 2 more. So there's definitely a numeric limit.
Up to 6.
Up to 6 for right now. But to your larger question, are there things where they could say, we don't have to answer that? Yes and no. It may be that during the course of a deposition, somebody says, I can't answer that. That's a privileged conversation. For example, one of the opponents here is the acting general counsel of the Department of Homeland Security. And that's an objection that the government's lawyer, Drew Ensign, raised yesterday at the hearing before Judge Zinnes, saying, well, what about privilege, Your Honor? And she basically said, look, you put this guy up as a declarant, you have a sworn declaration from him. To the extent that you've waived attorney-client privilege, you're going to have to deal with that in the moment, but I will make myself available to police those kinds of disputes about privilege or any other sort of objections that the government has to answering particular questions in the moment. Usually in civil litigation, it's not atypical for a plaintiff or defendant to say, your client isn't going to answer that question, well, let's call the judge. Usually that's an idle threat. In this case, I don't think it is, and I think Judge Zinnes is ready to receive their call.
So, Garrett, the judge did rebuke the Trump administration for their lack of effort to return Abrego Garcia. What are we hearing from the administration?
Well, broadly speaking, the administration's position is that all of this is academic, that Abrego Garcia is in custody of El Salvador, and it's El Salvador's problem to solve if they're so inclined. Further, the administration says if Abrego Garcia were to somehow show back up on U.S. soil or present himself at a point of entry, they would turn around him and deport him again, either back to El Salvador or to a third country. That's the only way, in their view, this ends. More narrowly, they're continuing to argue that Abrego Garcia was a member of the gang MS-13, although when pressed about evidence, they've had little they've been able to provide. Here was the Attorney General asked a question about this just this morning.
ICE testified, an immigration judge ruled he was a member of MS-13, an appellate judge ruled he was a member of MS-13. Hard stop. He should not be in our country.
The evidence. We're not going to see the evidence.
We have the transcripts from the court hearings. I'll be glad to give you the court hearings from 2019, what we have, sure, with the rulings from the judges, gladly.
Not to go too deep into the weeds here, Jose, but rulings from immigration judges aren't necessarily first-party evidence here, and immigration judges aren't the same as district court judges. They are part of the executive branch. This press for evidence here, I think, has been critical because the White House has been picking and choosing cases in which they provide lots of detail about some of the folks they've deported and almost none about others. I think it's another sort of deep well of information that reporters are going to continue to press for more on.
Garrett, hey, thank you so very much. Lisa.